Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you for the Townsend VFW for hosting this event. I do want everyone to know that tonight we'll be broadcasting live until I say that it's no longer being recorded. So the question and answer part will be recorded. The meet and greet after will not be recorded. My name is Kim Craven and I am with the Townsend Business Association. We are nonpartisan. We are doing this as a community service to the candidates so that they can have an opportunity to talk with all of you so that you can make your choices in the primary coming up on September 6th. I think that you all both know the candidates. They'll introduce themselves formally, but of course to my immediate left is Andrew Shepard and to my far left is Lynn Archambault. So I've given the candidates the opportunity to reflect on the questions for a day. I think that it's very important that they have the opportunity, because some of the questions go a little bit deeper, that they have the opportunity to think about it. This is not a time for us to get anybody. This is an opportunity for us to really get to know them a bit with some questions that go a little bit deeper than the norm. Each question will be giving a time limit and we'll alternate back and forth with who goes first with the questions. And at the end, the candidates will have an opportunity to give some closings, reflect back on any comments that they have said during the night, and they'll also be able to comment on something from their opponent. Then they will have an opportunity to give a closing statement and then have an opportunity to talk with all of you. There's no cards around. Because there are so many questions, we want to make sure that we get through those. And if there's new questions that the audience has, I want to make sure to be able to get to those first at the end. And both candidates will be able to see all the questions so that there's no question of, you know, was it my choice of to ask a question or not. It's really going to be about time at the end. So without further ado, I would like to start. Each candidate is going to be able to provide a personal summary. This is to include just their background, not anything about their political viewpoints. They'll give that brief personal summary in 1.5 minutes, and we will let Lynn start because she is the person from out of town. So we'll let her have the floor first. Go ahead, Lynn.
I think I'm going to stand for this so everyone can see me clearly. My name is Lynn Archambault, and just like Andrew, I'm a townie too, but from Pepperell, longtime resident of Pepperell, where many generations of my family's from. I attended North Middlesex High School. I was president of my class, president of the National Honor Society. I graduated second in my class, went on to attend the University of Lowell, University of Mass Lowell it's called now. I graduated summa cum laude with a business degree there. I then, after graduation, I started in the sales world, business world, and a few years later started a family. So I figured at that point, the most important thing I could do was raise my children. I feel like that is a super important job and one of the hardest jobs. So I stayed at home for a long time. And then eventually I went back into the corporate environment. I worked for an IBM partner and worked my way up very quickly and became a sales operations manager at that time. During the same time, I was also building my business in Pepperell called Arch Fitness. It's been there for about 12 years at this point. We started from nothing, and now we have a big space in Pepperell. It's a great environment. I then decided, after being in corporate America, by the way, I'm also a realtor for over 22 years, that I wanted to follow my passion. And I left my job with a really good salary, took a pay cut in half to follow my passion to be a teacher at North Middlesex High School, where I attended. I love the kids at the high school. I love teaching. I earned my master's in health and wellness. And I still work. I actually am on the Recreation Commission in town. I'm an athletic trainer and an EMT. I'm a homeowner, taxpayer, and resident of Pepperell. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Before Andrew begins, if I could just ask everybody to please shut your cell phones off. If you could put them on silent. I do have mine out in order to do the timer. Andrew will give you an extra 6 seconds for your opening statement. To be fair, go ahead, Andrew.
All right, thank you, Kim, and thank you everybody for coming out this evening. I'd like to thank Kim and the Townsend Business Association and the VFW for hosting this evening. I'd just like to give a brief background about myself. As requested, born and raised in Townsend, I'm a local guy. I'm fortunate to come from a family that's been working in this area for over 100 years, as firefighters, as farmers, as teachers, as business owners, social workers, and I'm proud to be here today standing in front of you running for the state representative position to continue to serve our community. A big thing about me is, I'm a business owner. I own my own business, a 5-gallon water jug company, Bayberry Hill Water. I work in our family farm where we raise about 1,000 holiday turkeys and do 300 acres of hay, and I'm fortunate to serve as a call firefighter here locally. A little bit of qualifications for myself. I have Beacon Hill experience. I've worked with previous Representative Sheila Harrington. I've also had an internship with Governor Charlie Baker, as well as my master's degree in resource economics. Kim directly asked about our service to the local community. I would like to highlight, I recently joined the Board of Workers Credit Union as a board of director. I volunteered with the TEO in Townsend, our local food bank, and it's a part, of our family culture to be always trying to give back. And I do that with my own company, Bayberry Hill Water, where we've sponsored a well building in Africa, and we continue to donate some of our water locally to the homeless in Fitchburg. So again, thank you everybody for coming out. It's a pleasure to be here and meet you all, and I look forward to our evening together.
Thank you, Andrew. You're going to start with this question now, Andrew. What do you see as the main responsibility of being a state representative? And you'll have 1 minute for your answer.
Thank you, Kim. The main responsibility of a state representative, I feel directly familiar with this, having worked on Beacon Hill with our former state representative, Sheila Harrington. I see a big thing is, you're the voice for the district. You're going down to Beacon Hill and you're representing our area on all the laws that are being passed in the Commonwealth. Another one is you're working on the state budget. You're working on, funding the government, $52 billion in state funding. You're also working on earmarks, bringing money back for our area, for roads, for bridges, for local programs. And the biggest piece is also solving constituent problems. And, is directly familiar with that, working in our, Representative Harrington's constituent office in Groton. And you have constituents come in, and homeowners, voters, and they're having an issue because of the breakdown of government services, and you're there to help them navigate that back end, help them get the veteran's license plate they've been struggling to get at the RMV, or other challenges that they have throughout the Commonwealth.
And you have the floor.
I'm a conservative outsider who realizes that Beacon Hill is now broken. And I feel that our state representative has to represent the people of our district, not the radical left agenda that's happening, the one-party rule that's happening right now. We need a representative that will report to constituents, listen to their issues, be there for small businesses, and deliver to the district. They need to be transparent and communicative. We don't need career politicians that go along to get along. We need strong voices right now on Beacon Hill, because what is happening is not a good scene currently in our state.
Thank you. The next question will be back to Andrew. What have you done specifically to prepare for this position? You'll have 1 minute to answer.
I think what have I done specifically to prepare for this position? I've worked in the role before, not directly, but, with our former representative, having a deep understanding for the nature of the job and how to be effective. It takes, working with people on each side to get resources for our area. And that, I think, is critically important, that you don't have someone that goes down there and saber rattles, and you have someone that goes down there and can get what we need for our roads and our bridges and our seniors and our veterans. You asked me directly what have I done to prepare. When I announced my campaign, I reached out to all the local officials, police chiefs, fire chiefs, select members, the town moderator, administrators, and sat down with as many that were willing to listen and hear what what does each community need. And I feel deeply familiar with what we need in our district and how to go down there and solve those issues and get those resources for ourselves.
Thank you.
If you asked me a year and a half or 2 years ago if I thought I would be a politician, I would have laughed at you. To prepare for this position, I've lived a life, and sometimes it's been hard. I've had to raise a family as a single mom. I've had to find a job because I was left with no health insurance. I've had to face many challenges in my life. I'm upset what's going on in our community and our state and our country right now. I have met with thousands of constituents at this point in our district and many town officials, many ministries, to talk to them about the issues facing our community. I've also been studying mass law since I decided to run.
Thank you. Andrew, the next, we've asked the how, now we'd like to get to the why. Why do you want to be our state representative? You'll have 1 minute.
Yeah, I have seen firsthand the impacts you can have in this position when you have somebody that's there for the right reasons. And when you have somebody that's there and knows how to get the job done, you can make such a difference in the people's lives that come to you that are having a problem with our government and with what's going on locally. And having that experience, having worked there, when the opportunity arose, I thought, this is what I want to do. I want to continue to serve my community, and that's why I decided to run.
Thank you. So the next question, Andrew, we'll start with you.
Oh wait, I didn't
Oh,
answer.
sorry, Lynn.
That's okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. The reason I decided to run for state rep, Beacon Hill's broken, and we need our local voices here in the 1st Middlesex District heard. We've become a one-party system where there's no stopping the radical agenda at this point. I want to fight for our Constitution. I love this country, and I understand what it's like to have our freedoms taken away. We nearly lost my business having it being locked down because it was deemed unnecessary. I have seen the effects of mandates and lockdowns on our children in this district firsthand. We have a mental health crisis on our hands, and I want to fight hard for the working folks here in our district.
Thank you. So the next question, Lynn, you will start. And we're flooded with lots of information in our daily lives. When you're conducting research on a topic, how do you validate your information?
I have my master's degree, and when we had to write research papers, we were required to find only peer review research and data. So I'm well aware of how to do that. When I research something, I like to look at both sides of an issue. For example, let's look at what just happened this year in Massachusetts. Our legislators voted to make it legal for illegal immigrants to get a driver's license in our state. This allows them to register to vote. So I thought to myself, okay, let's look at the other side. Why do they want them to get driver's licenses? So I asked, and I did some research, and they said they wanted it to be a safer place to drive. Okay, so then I did some research and found out that a couple Republicans proposed an amendment to this bill saying, let's at least let the driver's license look different so they cannot register to vote. And you know what? The Democrats voted it down. That showed me the true intention of this bill. So I'm currently fighting, trying to put that on the ballot in November. We have sheets here if any of you haven't signed yet.
Good job. Andrew?
I will say both of us are collecting signatures against the driver's licenses for illegal immigrants bill, and happy to collect your signatures as well this evening. Having a, there's a few ways. I'll tell you, having a master's in economics, my thesis, which was published in a peer-reviewed paper, you got to validate your information. You got to look at both sides. You got to dig deep. I don't make knee-jerk reactions and decisions to things. I like to look at the qualitative and the quantitative information, and the biggest thing for me is listening. You listen to each side, and you talk to those who are affected and who those that are the relevant parties in the decision.
Thank you. The next question, Andrew, we're going to start with you. What do you perceive as the 3 to 5 most pressing issues within the district? And in detail, how would you address each of those issues? You'll have 2 minutes for this question.
There's a number of issues that are going on throughout our district. One thing, throughout the district when I'm meeting with people is cost right now. And you look at the economy and inflation, and people are struggling with the money that they have left in their pocketbook, trying to decide about paying for fuel, locking in fuel price these days, what to buy for groceries. Everything comes back down to the wallet. A big thing for me, especially as a small business owner, is trying to support local businesses. And I think you need a very balanced approach to doing that. And one of the ways I think we can solve some of the challenges going on in our local economy and with our local small businesses is workforce housing. And really trying to promote our local area and try to make sure we have sustainable housing for people throughout, so we can have laborers that can go deliver pizza and work in our local economy. Another big one that comes across is school funding. And having regional schools throughout the district, the regional school budget is such a big part of each community, and it's a big wear on taxpayers. And to make sure we go down there and fight some of the unfunded mandates in terms of busing, I think would be really important. It could put more money back in the town coffers that can go to other challenges that are going on in the area. And another big one, I was in Ashby the other day. Everybody I talked to in Ashby is concerned about the roads, roads and infrastructure. And I want to make sure we're getting the money and getting the resources we need to make sure we have strong roads and strong infrastructure for the district.
Thank you. Lynn?
So 3 of the biggest challenges I think we face, or pressing issues within our district. The first being inflation, the sheer cost of living right now in our state, our extreme housing, they all go hand in hand. What I would do is I would vote against, number 1, the millionaires tax that's coming up. I would also vote to repeal the gas tax to give us some relief in our state. The Affordable Care Act made our state so burdened that it only helped those larger companies that employ a lot of very educated people. It has hurt the small businesses here in our district. So I would fight for that. One of the main reasons I'm even running for state representative, I feel so passionate about the students in our community. The mental health right now is in jeopardy. I can't say that enough. I've seen it firsthand. I want to fight against ideologies. I want to investigate the effects of social media. We cannot have any more lockdowns for our children. I've developed an internship at the high school for my department, which has been super successful, given kids a real chance to feel responsible and needed. I'd like to do more with local businesses as far as externships, having seniors work in our community and see what they like to do. I'd also like to have mentorships with seniors. It's so important for kids to have seniors to look up to and have that interaction. And finally, the tax burden on our state. We need to ease the tax burden on our citizens, especially as we border New Hampshire. Our local businesses need to be able to compete. 87,000 new IRS agents are not going to help us. Look at the mess we're in Massachusetts with our MBTA. It's a disaster that all our communities will be paying for.
Thank you. So Lynn, we're going to start the next question with you. During the pandemic, we saw an increase in the use of technology to facilitate online meetings. Do you think that online and remote meetings should continue? Why or why not?
I definitely see the advantage to online meetings for some town meetings for people who can't make it to be able to Zoom in. However, there are some downfalls. You can't read body language as much. The bonding, the camaraderie is lost on Zoom meetings. Sometimes technology fails. I know as a teacher, this was a huge issue for us trying to teach remotely. The kids were not getting the education they needed. It resulted in depression, anxiety, and the reduction in collective intelligence. I also don't believe the State House should be remote. We were the last state house in the country to go back in person. Yet we were paying the fees of transportation for all of our state reps.
Thank you. Andrew?
You know, coming from a farming background, there's no remote meetings in the hayfield. I'll tell you that. There's no substitute for that. You know, I think it's a balance, and it really depends on the setting and the situation. You know, there's going to be some companies that you know, remote meetings will work for, and I think the market will sort itself out in that sense. In terms of town government, you know, it really depends. I put a lot of value on being in person and being able to talk to people and, you know, read that interaction and be able to, you know, level up with people and solve those local problems.
Thank you. Okay. So this one is the big one. Andrew, we'll start with you on this one. So the state requires a certain amount of housing to be affordable. In order to become a counted property, an owner must go through a process so that that property is designated so that it can be subsidized. Currently, the rate of affordable housing is 4.3%. Many properties in Townsend are rented at below market value but are not subsidized. Both of you have spoken on a platform of choice. So if a property owner does not want to enter a state program, do you think that their property should be included in our affordable housing numbers? Do you have any other strategies that you believe could also be enacted for meeting the affordable housing requirements? You have 2 minutes for this question.
You know, I think this is a problem with the bureaucracy right here. You know, they're not allowing you to count your home if you're renting under market rate, and it doesn't give a fair assessment for how much affordable housing we have in the area. So I think we need to change the metric that's being done and being used here to make it more reflective of what type of affordable housing we have in this area. I'd want to shift the onus. You know, I believe that, you know, for this program, a home has to sign up for I think it's a 15-year commitment to having affordable housing. The property owner does, and you know, that's a lot of burden on the person that's renting the property. We don't have time, you know, to do something like that. I think if we can shift it to make it more of an easy opt-in, or say, look at how many homes are being rented below the market rate, and say, okay, these are affordable. You know, that is the amount of affordable housing that we have in the area. It doesn't make sense to penalize towns that do have, you know, some greater affordable housing than is really being seen.
Thank you. Lynn?
This is a complicated question, but the original policy was that any dwellings at or below median income for the area were supposed to be considered affordable. Whether they were subsidized had nothing to do with it. If this is not the standard now, the state has changed the goalposts yet again. As far as a policy goes, this is the state trying to override home rule to give state-favored developers a chance to come in and build state-funded housing wherever they want. The state tries to hold us hostage by dangling our own money in front of us. They tell us things like, well, if you get 10%, we'll give you some of your money back. This has been really challenging for our communities that are so rural. It's difficult to have affordable housing in very rural communities because they usually like public transportation, and then a lot of retail environments for people to walk, and we don't have that in our communities. So it's a struggle to reach that 10% threshold. Also, now the debate is often between, do we do 40R housing or do we do 40B housing? 40R actually gives some money back to the town, and it gives the local control a little bit, so we can kind of control what the housing is like. So that has been interesting as well. We also have to really take into consideration that developers have to be able to make money on a project. We have to do this responsibly because we have to make sure the town can support the utilities, the water, the schooling, etc.
Thank you. Lynn, we're going to start with this next question with you. At your previous engagements, both of you have spoken against the critical race theory. Critical race theory is not part of the curriculum in our district, so please don't focus your response on critical race theory. But how do you believe the Commonwealth, and specifically our district, should address inequity based on race, class, gender, and disabilities in our schools? You'll have 2 minutes.
Okay, I reject actually the premise of this question. I am a teacher at the high school, and I know firsthand, I've had training on it, that we are teaching CRT. It's being woven into our curriculum. And if we continue to hide our heads in the sand about this, we're going to be in big trouble. A petition was sent by a group of residents demanding that they specifically teach CRT and train the teachers on critical race theory. It spelled it out. Andrew signed that petition. It's on public record. This kind of teaching is very divisive. It's racist teaching, if you've researched anything about it. I am against all types of racism in our schools, period. I teach all my students tolerance, and I teach everyone to treat others how you would like to be treated. History should be taught, the good, the bad, the ugly, but not in this divisive Marxist way. We're falling behind in the world stage in our education. We need to focus back on the education in our schools and reject the racist ideologies that they're trying to teach our children in Massachusetts.
Thank you. Andrew, go ahead.
You know, my opponent has perpetually misconstrued my position on critical race theory. I do not, and I have not, ever supported the teaching of critical race theory. On the other hand, I do believe that diversity is important, and we have to make sure that we're teaching a full history to our students. That includes talking about slavery and includes talking about the impacts of it. You know, diversity is really important. We are a predominantly white working class area, and going through North Middlesex, I didn't get exposed to a lot of things in our culture until I went to college. So I think having, a variety of different perspectives interwoven into the school, I think is important. But it's got to be done with balance, and I most certainly do not support the teaching of critical race theory.
So thank you both for answering that. I'm actually going to have this opportunity, and I told them both that I would do follow-up questions as I saw fit. So I asked to not talk about critical race theory because we've heard that on several of the debates. What I want to hear about, and I'll give you each 1 minute, is what are we going to do to address the inequality that we have based on race, class, gender, and disability in our schools. Lynn, I'll go ahead and give you 1 minute to talk specifically on that.
We work every day as teachers to treat our students fairly and equitably. I know myself, I do not see race when I teach my children and my students. We have many things going on at our school to address the different cultural differences, educating our students on different culture. They want to learn about the different cultures. It's amazing. They love it. They love each other. We are making it more racist. If you talk to kids right now, that's racist, that's racist, that's racist. Where are they getting that from, guys? They're getting it from our schools. And I'm sorry, Kim, but I get passionate about this because I know what's happening. So that's what we need to do. We need to focus on educating, creating a cultural and friendly environment, but not this kind of racist teaching.
Time. Thank you. Andrew, I'll give you 1 minute to follow up. And again, the question was based on inequality based on race, class, gender, and disability.
I think nobody supports discrimination or bullying based on somebody's race or any other characteristics that distinguish them from their classmates. And I think, for me, it's really important that, we're talking about, our full history as a culture. We're talking about different cultures. We're exposing kids to all that's going on in the world. I think that's fair. I don't think North Middlesex did the best job while I was there. I think they're growing and teaching more, and, I encourage, widening the palette that we expose our students to. And I think that's how you work towards that.
Thank you. All right, so Andrew, you'll be first on this next question, and you'll have 1.5 minutes. Massachusetts has several laws supporting the LGBTQ community. Please provide your views on these matters. Do you support the current LGBTQ laws? Why or why not? And do you believe that the laws provide enough, too much, or not enough protection to the LGBTQ community? You'll have 1.5 minutes.
Like I said before, nobody should be discriminated against at all. And I think the laws that we have in place for LGBTQ and marginalized groups, preventing anti-discrimination laws, anti-bullying, parenting laws, I think that I am comfortable with them and I wouldn't seek to change them at all.
Thank you. Lynn?
As a teacher and a business owner of many different types of people that come to my business, that I teach, I unequivocally do not tolerate any type of discrimination or intolerance. This has no place in our community. We need to have understanding and acceptance of all. We live in a free country to practice our freedoms, whether we agree with other ideas or not. As a realtor, I practice a strict code of ethics to not discriminate, and that holds true in my whole life.
Thanks. So you'll have the next question. Do you believe that your position can address the overrepresentation of members of community color in our prison system? Why or why not? You'll have 1 minute. Is that me? Sorry. Yes.
Okay, sorry. I'm not sure of the relevance of this question for the citizens of the 1st Middlesex District. We have no prisons in our district, but I will say this, if people break the law, we must have strong prosecutors so they will not be released to do it again. We have to be held accountable for our actions no matter what race, color, gender. We have a crime spree going on across this nation right now in our local cities as well. We need to address this. We cannot become like the cities of New York and San Francisco where they're releasing criminals to do it all over again.
Okay. Andrew?
I try to stay out largely of national issues. I do think nationally there is an overrepresentation of people of color in our prison systems. I think locally, I have firsthand experience working with restorative justice, which is a diversion program. It's really just a tool for police officers and law enforcement when they come across somebody who, has made the wrong decision, and instead of, if there is remorse, and instead of sending them directly to the court, they can divert them to another program. I think something like that is useful and valuable for our officers. But I do think that we are a nation of laws, and if you break the law, you need to be held accountable, and that's regardless of your race. And I think for communities of color, I think it's important we all come together and try to look at some of the roots of our crime in the area. And I think programs and mentorship for youth are really important to work on that.
Thank you. Andrew, you'll have this question first. And similar question, but for a different part of our communities. Do you feel your position can address the overrepresentation of children from community of colors in our child welfare, our foster care system? Why or why not?
I think, like I said in the beginning, I like to make all my decisions, well-informed. I don't have a lot of experience with the foster care system. Having worked previously with Representative Harrington, one of her big focuses was working with DCF and on legislation that can work to improve that. I would be open to working with community leaders and seeing what the issues were and how we could address them and solve them at a local level.
Thank you. Lynn?
I really feel that the real problem facing our children is inflation and poverty, which is causing so many children in our welfare system. No matter what color, our policies have caused many people to not be able to care for their children. The Affordable Care Act, causing minimum wage increase demands, the Family Leave Act, etc., all contribute to the decline of small businesses in our state and jobs in our society. As a small business owner, I know the burden these things have on companies. We can't hire as many people, too many businesses are leaving the state. We can't afford our children because of our Massachusetts state policies.
Thanks. You'll start with the next question. How would you address the lack of diversity in public sector jobs in our district? You'll have 1 minute.
I haven't really read that data, but I think the big question that we're facing in First Middlesex, from me talking to many business owners, is where can we get workers, period. It doesn't matter their race. Our local businesses are struggling to find reliable, qualified employees. One way my opponent and I differ here is that he believes in having government incentivize people to work. But I believe we need to stop incentivizing people to not work. We need to let people get to work.
Andrew.
Yeah, I think that's crazy. That's nuts. Incentivizing people to not work, we both want the same thing. We want people to go out and work. To answer this question, diversity is important, but the first priority is to make sure that we have a labor pool. And whatever means we can do, I think the root of that is looking at affordable housing and trying to increase that in our area.
Thanks. I'm going to, again, just take a little bit of a liberty because I want to really focus on our public sector jobs, not just our workforce. So I'll talk from a field that I know intimately well. There's others in the audience that know the makeup of our other public sector district jobs. So in our district, we are well below the national average of women in law enforcement. For those of you that don't know, that's my field. Nationally, we're at 13%. In this town, we no longer have a female police officer. In most of our neighboring towns, we don't have females. So that's the type of diversity and representation that I'm talking about. So then I'll give you a minute just to address that, and then Andrew the same.
Yes, well, when it comes to things like police officers, right now, our country, little kids used to feel like, I want to be a police officer when I grow up because they're our heroes. And our country has been making them into evil. So it's a hostile environment for a lot of people. So it is discouraging for women to want to go into law enforcement. I think it's tough out there. I mean, especially if they have families or the hopes of raising them. No one wants to be shot at with no retribution and no prosecution. So I think that's a main problem in that area.
Andrew?
I know we have specific questions about policing that we'll get into shortly. Like I said in the beginning, diversity is important. I think the role as a state rep, I would see it incumbent upon myself to host job fairs and try to get as many people locally as we could to the area to help support our local business, whether it's local law enforcement. I mean, it is so important to have a diversity of thought and in gender, in race, whether it's in police, whether it's in government. So whether it's working with the diversity offices in the state and seeing what we could do to use some of their resources and their knowledge to get a different type of people out here, and it really makes the area better.
Thank you. So Andrew, you'll have the floor first on this next question. Our country is facing unprecedented gun violence. Massachusetts has some of the toughest gun laws in the country, incidentally signed into law by our Republican administration, and some of the lowest gun violence rates in the country. Are there any additional safety measures that you would support to keep gun violence and our death rate from guns low? You'll have 2 minutes.
I think it's absolutely terrible what's been happening across the country. It's devastating, and I would hope that we don't have something like that happen in our community. Massachusetts has one of the most comprehensive set of gun laws in the country. And for me, it's about responsible gun ownership. As a farmer, having my license to carry, we use guns on the farm all the time, and it's really about proper education and making sure that lawful gun owners are using them appropriately, and we're keeping guns out of the hands of people that don't use them appropriately. It's not a one-size-fits-all either. Life in Wyoming is different than life in Massachusetts. But I am comfortable with the current state of gun laws, and I wouldn't seek to add any more or change them.
Thank you. Lynn?
Kim, you're right. We have some of the strongest gun laws in the country. I have my LTC, and I support the Second Amendment. We do not need any more gun laws in our state. What we need to focus on is who is pulling the triggers in the violence. We have to take a look at the mental health crisis right now facing our youth and what's going on with young people. Putting our heads in the sand with this mental health crisis is not going to help. And we need to keep our police resource officers in our public schools to provide that extra safety.
Thanks. The next question, beyond gun control, what measures would you support to keep guns out of the schools? Lynn, you'll take this question first.
The document that was in public record that I expressed before, that was, I believe, in 2020 when the whole George Floyd thing was happening. It also stated in that document that Andrew signed that they wanted to reevaluate the police officer in our school. As a teacher, there's nothing I wouldn't do to protect our kids. I fought to have that resource officer from Townsend in our schools, and I will keep fighting. I also spoke years ago at a faculty meeting to install metal detectors for kids coming in, and I was told it would make kids feel unsafe. So I think that's something, just like every other government building in our state, maybe we need to take a close look at, because by the time something happens, it's too late.
Thanks. Andrew?
You know, again, with the misrepresentation by my opponent, and I believe she is part of the union that wanted to remove the school resource officer. Now, for me, it's really important to make sure we have a school resource officer, and I don't think the word reevaluate or look deeper at what we have for processes throughout the Commonwealth in our district is a bad thing to do. You know, I think it's about making sure there's education on the dangers of guns for students, and making sure we involve the community, and something like the Townsend Rod and Gun Club, which is such an important asset to our area, to make sure we're teaching and talking about gun safety and getting people familiar with guns and how to use them and store them properly.
The next question, in your earlier engagements, you both stated that you support the police. Across the country, this discussion of police reform. You both discussed the topic of defunding. I don't want you to talk about defunding, but do you believe there's other adjustments needed to policing to address public safety in our communities? You'll have a minute and a half. Andrew, we'll start with you.
I'm proud to be the police endorsed candidate in this race. Recently I picked up the endorsement of the Massachusetts State Police Association, and I'll tell you, when a lot of these endorsements, when you're in the political realm, they send you these surveys, they ask you to, which way are you going to vote on this? With the state police, it wasn't anything like that. You sit down with them and they said, hey, we know that we've got challenges throughout policing in this Commonwealth, and we just want, for our endorsement, somebody who's going to be committed to working with us on making proper reforms for policing throughout the Commonwealth. And when I talked to them about it, they said, you are obviously going to be our candidate that we're going to support in this primary. I think part of the problem we have are knee-jerk reactions, all throughout our country. And I think the post bill that passed in 2020 in Massachusetts, I think was a knee-jerk reaction to some of the violence that was going on in the national media. We have some incredible community policing in this area, and some of the recent regulations, I'm really worried that the quality of policing, in our community and throughout the Commonwealth is going to degrade. So I think it's really important that, we look at some of the recent reforms and try to reevaluate them and go through and see what we can remove from them.
Thanks.
I wish I had a chance to sit down with the Mass State Police, but I didn't have that opportunity. We are losing, I have spoken though to many Mass State troopers, retired, current police officers. We're losing record numbers of police officers because they're working in hostile environments. They have unnecessary mandates. We lost a lot with the vaccine mandates. I just spoke with an early retired trooper who said that we're losing the senior exceptional officers and they can't get new candidates to join the force. Okay? So we need to really be supportive of our police. Like I said, they used to be our heroes and now our country has taken a turn. That being said, every area of our public sector should always has room for improvement. I know that the Mass State Police just suffered a lot of corruption and things happening with them. So every area needs to be looked at.
Thank you. We're going to start with you on this question. Again, you both touched on this very lightly in some of your previous engagements, but the current police reform bill that went through with its training requirements essentially abolished part-time and reserve police officers, which were very prevalent here in our region. You both stated that positions are needed in the communities in our district. What will you do to restore these positions, and do you have any other strategies to support police staffing?
I am going to fight to restore these valuable positions in our community. We need those resource officers in our schools, and we need those reserve police officers. I know that I think Ashby has to have Mass State Troopers fill in because they don't have enough officers. I will fight for that. And as Andrew said, yeah, the National Union, Teachers Union, wanted to get rid of our police officer, and I fought against that.
Okay. Andrew? Yeah.
I'm really worried about the future of policing in our Commonwealth. I also picked up the endorsement of the Mass Correctional Officers Union. They have, in their incoming class of trainees, they have 26 people, to go and work in the prisons. They've got a shortage of 700. You're going to have legitimately the inmates running the asylum. There's not going to be enough people working in the prisons. They're shutting down auxiliary forces throughout the Commonwealth for police departments. We need to look at the Post Act and repeal some of the reforms that came about through it.
Thank you. This next question, Andrew, we'll start with you. At your previous events, you both spoke out against the estate tax. They don't apply until after the estate exceeds $1 million, and then it doesn't apply to spousal inheritance. Could you explain why you're against this specific tax and how you would make up lost revenue?
I hear your concern about lost revenue, Kim. Right now in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, we have $5 billion in surplus. I think we have more than enough to cover some changes to the estate tax. We are one of the worst in the country for our estate tax. As Jim said right there, the worst in the country. You heard it from Jim. Now, we're right next to New Hampshire, and this is a big problem for our area. Governor Sununu is actively recruiting businesses in Massachusetts to come over to New Hampshire because, the cost of doing business there is so much cheaper. You got people that, whether it's a family farm, a small business they raised, an S-corp, they want to sell it and move on, and they got to worry about estate taxes and stuff. And it's nonsensical. I really hope we raise it and get it in line with the federal level.
Thank you. Lynn?
The estate tax is a tax on small businesses, residents who've built up equity in their homes, like many of us, and local farms as well. It doesn't take much in today's environment for an estate to be valued over $1 million. We all know what the housing market's like. Farmers will have to go and sell their land in some cases to pay for this. We don't need to make up the lost revenue. We have a $5 billion surplus in our state, and the Massachusetts legislators don't want to give it back. Even though there's a law saying they need to give it back, they're trying to find ways to spend it. We don't have a revenue problem in our state. We have a spending problem.
Lynn, you'll start with this question. Do you believe that climate change needs to be addressed? Why or why not? And if yes, what do you believe are the most important initiatives that can be enacted at the local level to address climate change?
I think the climate that most needs to be addressed right now is the climate on Beacon Hill, to be honest. We're breaking the back of the businesses and families with our current policies. We're a rural community of working class people that rely on diesel and fuel to make their businesses work, to make a living, to get around. We don't have mass transit here. We rely on our cars to get around. Jumping into this climate emergency and jumping into these policies are going to destroy fixed income families like our seniors. We have 1,000 homeless vets right now in our state. they're going to struggle with inflation and high fuel costs. I'm a teacher. I can't afford an electric car. I can't afford a $1,500 fuel bill every couple months.
This time. Andrew?
You know, in the beginning, my opponent was hinting that I'm a career politician, but I didn't hear a single answer in that question. You know, I'll tell you, as a farmer, as a firefighter, the climate is clearly changing. You know, we just had a huge fire in West Townsend where the ground was so dry, the fire burned into the soil and then rekindled days later. You know, as a farmer, the well for our cows has gone dry more often, you know, every summer in the past few years. You know, but for me, it's about balance. You know, the climate is changing, but we got to make sure that, you know, we're looking at all different fuel sources that we can have to support our Commonwealth and our district. And as a small business owner, you know, I only have heavy trucks. You know, moving water jugs, heavy water jugs. I need diesel trucks. There is no alternative right now. And we need to make sure we have a voice that on Beacon Hill that understands some of the challenges going through business and making sure they're focused on balance. And that's what I can bring to the table.
I'm going to just add a bit here. So the state has given a lot of money to do climate change assessments in the area. Many of the towns have master plans. So I just want to bring it down a little bit. Some of the things that we're lacking in this area, park and ride share, opportunities like that. Do you see the opportunity at the district level to have a positive impact on climate change by utilizing something like that? This will be a yes or no question. Lynn? Yes. Andrew?
Yes.
Thank you. The next question, Andrew, we'll start with you. Both of you have spoken about improving the economics of the region. Many state programs for economic development are not applicable to companies or programs in our region. What would you do in order to change this paradigm and assist building the local economy through existing state funds? Of 1 minute.
You know, I think in the text of that question, Kim hits the nail on the head. You know, a lot of the programs out there throughout the Commonwealth are not applicable to companies or our region. And I think it's reflective that we as a district outside of 495 often get left behind at the state level. And you got to have somebody that can go down there who can form relationships, who already has relationships, that can build, you know, more resources for our area and get the $52 billion in the state budget, just a little bit more of that out here to the 1st Middlesex District. And that is what I would focus on.
Lynn?
You know, I'm running and I own a small business, and the last thing I want is the government to help me build my business. I'm running to get the government off the backs of small businesses. I understand their pain. We lost hundreds of businesses in our state during our mandated lockdowns that will never come back, some of them long-time family businesses. What business has the government ever built that's been successful? I can't think of any. So that's how I feel about that. Yes, you know, we can go down and we can fight for funding, and that's what we should do as a state rep. And we should work on that for sure. But my goal is to get the government off the backs of your small businesses.
I just want to restate a bit of that question. So right now there's programs in our state that are giving out funding for economic development and programs, and they're not available in this region. Would you work within the district to actually have some of that funding applicable and attainable for some of our small businesses? Yes or no?
Yes, absolutely.
Andrew?
Yes.
Thank you. Right. So again, on the small business, this is very specific. Your small business owners in this region, given that experience, what specific economic development strategies do you believe are most important for the region in making it a destination that would boost economic growth? Andrew, you're first.
Sure. You know, I was very fortunate to sit down with the Northern Central Mass Chamber of Commerce a few weeks ago, and we chatted for about an hour looking at, you know, the 1st Middlesex District, but the whole Northern Central Mass area, and how to grow the business and in an area that's largely left behind at the state level. And for me, there's a number of things. I'm fortunate to be part of the Groton Hill project that we're constructing over in Groton. I think that'll be a great resource for the area. I think it's going to drive a lot of consumers, a lot of interest out to this area, and it's going to benefit the whole district. I think a big thing, it comes back down to housing and making sure we have places for people to live that can work for our local areas, for our businesses. They can go and deliver pizzas and work and labor, and it comes back to housing for me.
Thank you. Lynn?
Again, I don't believe that small businesses need elected officials telling them how to run their businesses. We need less government in our state, not more government. I'm pro small government as our community strives to compete with New Hampshire as we're a border community. And yes, just like looking at the Groton Music Center being developed, that is going to bring a lot of great business and help our economy a lot in this community. But we need to take a look at how we can help our businesses thrive currently by reducing their tax burden and making it more affordable for people to shop here as opposed to going to New Hampshire.
Thank you. So current earmarks bring funding to the region. Often these projects are not interconnected. Please provide your opinion on earmarks and how they might be most effectively awarded to improve the region. Lynn?
I'm running to eliminate pork across the state. I want to get rid of big government in Massachusetts to help our businesses flourish. We pay about $280 million in state taxes in this district. I'm not focused on pet projects to help the connected few in our district. I'm focused on the whole community. And yes, there are funds we must fight for and must bring funds to our community. That's part of our job. But my goal is to eliminate the pork across this state.
Andrew?
Lynn and I are both Republicans. We both don't want big government, but I like to be pragmatic and realistic. I'm going to go down to Beacon Hill, and I want to get as much resources of the $52 billion in the state budget for our area. And I'll tell you why that's important, because when I was out campaigning, I was at a DAV meeting here at the Townsend VFW. I had one of the members come up to me and say, Andrew, I'm really concerned. Some of our disabled vets, we can't get them up to the second floor. They struggle to get up the stairs, and I'm just not sure what to do. I'd like to get a stair chair. And I said, geez, I know some guys in the state government. Conveniently, I'm running for state rep. Let's see what we can do. I reached out to them. We got it in the budget. We got an earmark. And now the Townsend VFW has an earmark for $8,000 for a stair chair to get their disabled vets up to the second floor. So, earmarks are important. I think to answer your question directly, Kim, I see an incumbent as I go out and meet with folks and invested parties, whether it's the veterans, whether it's the seniors, the government officials, you see what each community needs. And you got to play the game to win the game. And for that, going out, whatever we need for our area, I'm going to try to get as much out of that state budget that I can.
Thank you. Just going to give a quick follow-up on that. So again, I can only talk of what I know. Andrew just informed me of a earmark that I didn't know about here. But I do know here in Townsend, we just got a $50,000 earmark for the rail trail. At the TEO, we got a big chunk of money for a transportation van to deliver food for seniors. All of these are coming back to us. So can you just clarify, you don't want the earmarks anymore?
No. I said I would absolutely fight for the earmarks. But my goal is to decrease the pork and the overspending at the state level.
Okay.
That is our money. It is our money, and I will fight for the most funding in our district that I can get. And I think that's great that we were able to get, we want to fight for the veterans and get as much as possible for them.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. So the next question, Andrew, will be starting with you. In your previous outings, you have said that you both oppose the mandatory COVID vaccination. In the United States, we have a number of required vaccinations. Do you support those vaccinations still being required? Why or why not? And if you see the COVID vaccine as different for the community, please explain. Finally, other countries are mandating the COVID vaccine. Does that or may that influence your stance?
So, the vaccinations outside of COVID that, are currently mandated, things like polio, I do think is a good idea. I wouldn't like another widespread polio outbreak. In terms of COVID, the vaccination rates throughout the community, it's about 80% of people who are vaccinated in Groton and Lunenburg, about 70% in Dunstable, and somewhere in the 60s for Ashby, Townsend, and Pepperell. So you can tell by those numbers that each community looks at the value of vaccination differently. I think it's incumbent and important, given how quickly the science has changed, for people to be able to make their own choice about what's best for them and their families. I think if, a number of years down the road, if we have a lot of substantial data, then we can look at it then. But I wouldn't support mandating the COVID vaccine right now.
Thank you. Lynn?
I've seen many people in our district lose their livelihoods, their jobs, be forced to get vaccines, or they would lose their jobs, not be able to go to certain colleges or college at all if they didn't get the vaccine. I do not believe in mandates. The data on the COVID vaccine varies dramatically. Other countries like Denmark are now eliminating it and not allowing children under 18 to get it. I believe in body autonomy. There are many people who can't get vaccinated because of medical circumstances. And those that weren't vaccinated, let's not forget that they faced a lot of discrimination in this state. They weren't allowed to go to certain restaurants. I saw it in the schools firsthand. Kids who were not vaccinated were sent home, even though they were exposed just like a child who was vaccinated. This is wrong. We live in the United States of America, and freedom is supposed to ring here, not mandates.
Hear, hear.
So that ends the questions that you had prior to. I'm going to start with some of the questions from the floor in order to give you the value of that discussion before you have your closing time. For each of you, you'll have a minute to describe to the audience what your top 3 priorities for veterans of the Commonwealth are. Lynn.
Veterans in the Commonwealth. Right now, our veterans, we have about 1,000 homeless veterans. If you look around, there's Wounded Warrior, there's Operation Camp. I've been a huge supporter of the veterans. Why do we have to have so many fundraisers for our veterans? Because we are not taking care of our veterans. We need to make sure if they fought for us and were wounded, then we need to care for them. We owe them. So I'm a big proponent of veterans. My grandfather was one of the first commanders over at VFW in Pepperell, and it's a very important thing for me. So we need to make sure our VA is functioning very efficiently and giving the veterans what they need. We need to make sure we have housing for those that are seriously injured and cannot take care of themselves anymore or support themselves.
Andrew?
One thing I'd really like to see, there's no veterans court available in northern central Massachusetts. And that's a court specifically for veterans if they have an issue or a problem with the law. Right now, they either have to travel to Holyoke or they have to travel to Framingham. And I think it'd be really important, for the delegation of northern central Mass to work on getting a veterans court for the area. Another big one is housing. I've talked about that a number of times tonight. Making sure we have housing set aside for our veterans, I think, is very important. And making sure, whether it's seniors or veterans, the inflation that's going on in this economy, it is forcing, those on a fixed income, to have to make a decision between the house that they raised their family in, that they came back from overseas to, and that should not be a decision that these people who served for us have to make. Another big part, I think, is outreach. They showed up for us. I think it's important for the state rep to show up for them. And that's making sure you're going out to veterans events, that's making sure you're going to the veterans meetings, and you're talking to them about the resources that are available already at the state level in terms of the Valor and the Brave Act, and then working to forward, whatever their needs are and push for those legislatively.
Thank you. Red pen on pink paper is hard to read. Unitil is a monopoly with 7-figure salaries. Can we get relief or at least a competitor or our own municipal power plant? Andrew, you'll have 1 minute.
Sure. This has been a big part of my campaign ever since the beginning. There's this bill out there called the Municipal Choice Bill. And, for the communities of Ashby, Townsend, and Lunenburg, we are uniquely familiar with some of the challenges of having Unitil as our service provider. The service is terrible. They're one of the most expensive in the country. What the Municipal Choice Bill does is it creates a state pathway to basically a market challenge, a market threat. And it allows the town of Townsend or Ashby or Lunenburg to say, we want to start the Townsend Electric Company or the Ashby Electric Company, or you do them all together. So I would support, pushing the Municipal Choice Bill. Sadly, it's been down at the State House for 20 years and hasn't had, the lobby's been pushing it down. So I would do whatever we could to, one, increase transparency throughout our government, and then two, also push for that bill to get passed.
Yes, I know that Unitil is a big issue for our residents in Townsend, Lunenburg, Ashby, and this will be one of my priorities. We should not, or you folks should not have to struggle with the extreme electric bills that you're facing. It's some of the highest, I believe, in the nation. So I would support the Municipal Choice Bill. I spoke with someone yesterday from Groton Electric. They do a better job. We need to do a better job for you guys as citizens to make it affordable to live here. It's a big burden to have to pay that every month.
This next question is about a specific building. At the local level, the Harbor Fire Station, that's the white one, Lynn in the harbor, that is being neglected by the Department of Conservation and Recreation. If you are elected, what can you do to save the building from ruin? 2 town administrators and Representative Harrington have been asked to intercede on our behalf. Of the Historic Commission to no avail. DCR holds a rent-free tenancy in exchange for maintenance.
Okay, I'm not familiar with this, but that's one of the things that a state rep should help their community on. If this is an issue, they help look for grants and things like that to help with this building. I was on the Historic District Study Committee. I'm very proud of our history and our community and would love to support any type of funding that helps with our historic buildings. So that's something that I would help fight for.
Andrew.
There's a few problems in that. One, I'm familiar with the building. My office is right next to it. I see it, every day as I go to work. Familiarity with DCR. DCR is one of the failed programs and agencies throughout the Commonwealth. It is filled with glut and dysfunction. They've had a revolving door of leadership for the past few years. And, you want to talk about cutting government spending, and, I think we need to truly reform DCR and get the pork and the crap out of that agency and get them so they can be effective. And case in point, you look at this building and it's falling into disrepair. I would use my bullying post, or however they say it, bully pulpit, to make sure that we lobby the folks at DCR to get the resources we need for our community, including that building.
Thanks. This question you may or may not know the answer to. The question is, can the ARPA funds be reassigned to another project within the town?
Directly, I'm not sure. I'd have to look into that. I don't believe so, but I don't want to make a statement without having it, ironed out.
I believe the ARPA funds can only be designated by I think there has to be a committee, and it has to be certain things like recreation and I believe housing. So it would have to be the committee that chooses that.
So we'll give that one with advance notice. You might be able to look that up and have an opinion, but certainly not one that most people would walk in the street off of. So the next general question is, who are you going to be supporting for governor and why? It's up to you whether you are declaring who you're voting for or not. If you want to talk about people's platform, you'll be able to do so. Yeah. Actually, no, it's Andrew's. Yes.
You know, I have made a point to not talk about any other races. You know, I am solely focused on this first Middlesex district and serving our 6 communities. I am happy to support whoever the Republican nominee will be for governor. The Democratic ticket is a little bit too much for me.
I'm supporting Jeff Deal for governor, and I received his endorsement today. Of course, I will support if the other Republican, Chris Doughty, if he is elected in the primary. But I believe Jeff really does a great job, you know, supporting the same views I support as a Republican.
There's one question here that is on vaccines, which we asked. There was another question, or 2 questions that are being incorporated into racism and the critical race theory. I'd like to table those for other questions because I feel like we covered that. We did have a specific question for Lynn. I'm not sure if it's applicable to anything on the debate, because it's not a question, I'm just not sure. I'm going to ask it, but are you a member of the teachers union, yes or no? And if yes, why doesn't she opt out? And I do know in some instances that people have to be a part of the union, whether they want to be or not, so I'm not sure.
I was not a part of the union until maybe the past 3 years. It was before COVID, and I was recommended by many of my fellow teachers to become part of the union. I saw what can happen when a parent or a student decides to get mad at you, and then you have to pay for your own attorney. And you know, there's not a lot of support, unfortunately, for teachers, and the administration almost always goes for the kids' word over teachers, which puts us in a lot of jeopardy. So I did join the teachers union. Then when I was, the National Teachers Union wanted to take out the school resource officers, I called, I wrote letters, I demanded they didn't, and I was going to opt out, but I have not done that yet. But that is something I am looking into because I don't agree with many of the beliefs of the teachers union.
Okay. There's another specific question here, and I'm going to paraphrase it just a little bit, but it's related to statements then that were made in an email related to your job and comparison of the principal to some specific groups. I'll let you read it.
This is completely inaccurate, so if whoever wrote this, I'd really love for you to come up and talk to me privately because this is a completely inaccurate statement / question. In case they want to come up.
Okay. I mean, I do know one part of it, that there was an email sent out, so maybe you could address that part.
There was, this is to my supporters, so I'm not sure how this got leaked out, but I actually really don't want to discuss this, but I will say this. Because I discussed the mental health of our students in our district, the administration is not happy. Let's just put it that way. They are not happy that I'm bringing to light that our kids, and I didn't mean just for North Middlesex, this is kids all across the state, are struggling. And again, putting our heads in the sand is not the way to do it. So yes, I was sent a letter from the district about that.
So that is all the questions from the floor. So now we have the clarification, answers, or points of disagreement based on your opponent's statements. Guess we'll go back and forth. Do you want to take the floor?
Based on my opponent's statements.
Yeah, so it's anything that you want clarification or points. So clarification of anything for yours, points of clarification that you'd like to make, anything that you have a disagreement on, something that was stated by your candidate, about you or your campaign. Just kind of, you have 3 minutes.
Okay. One thing I would like to address is, I know that Andrew kind of insinuates that I talk about national issues. National issues are very important. They trickle down to local issues. So yes, I am very well versed and aware of the things going on in our, not just in our state, in our community, but also in our country. I think it's important to do that. Also, I think that a lot of people are upset that I have a public document that it states specifically that it was critical race theory they wanted to be taught, and Andrew did sign it. It's a public record. So, you know, he's insinuating that I'm sort of making that up or misrepresenting. But if anybody would like to see it, I do have it actually with me. And it was signed. And maybe he didn't know what he was signing. Maybe he didn't understand it. But as a state representative, you have to know what you are signing. You have to be aware of national issues and how this affects us at a local level. I had to sit through horrendous training on how, as a white person, I should feel guilty and white kids should feel guilty for being white. That's not right. I had to sit and say and hear that the United States was the most racist country in the world. And it's because of the demand from that group of citizens. And so I know he's upset about that, but it did happen, and he admitted it at the last debate. So to say it wasn't accurate, he said the first line says that it doesn't represent everybody in the district. No, you're right, it doesn't. It doesn't represent most of us, but it does represent the people who signed it.
Andrew, you have 3 minutes.
Sure. You know, again, mischaracterization. You know, national issues are certainly important, and I think this may highlight a misunderstanding about what the job of the state rep does, because part of that is working with our national representatives. You know, you're dealing with our local offices at a federal level and trying to get the resources that come down to them for our community members. But grandstanding about national issues, walking around talking about how much you hate the president, you know, I'm all for, you know, supporting the Republicans and our beliefs and ideologies, but encouraging divisiveness I do not think is effective. And when you go down the Beacon Hill and you only throw mud, you get iced out. As simple as it can be, because I've worked down there and I've seen it. And when you get iced out, you're not going to get resources for our area. You're not going to get earmarks to get the VFW a stair chair to get their elderly members up to the second floor. And frankly, you know, that is not my approach. You know, the letter I think is perpetual mischaracterization. You know, at our second debate, my opponent was saying I want to defund the police. You know, because of that letter. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. If you'd like to talk about it, I'd be happy to talk about it with you. Now, you know, I clearly believe that my opponent is unelectable in the general election. I think she is too divisive, and I think a vote for Lynn will be a vote for the Democrat. So I really encourage you to get out and vote in September 6th in the Republican primary.
So I'm going to ask you each a follow-up based on that. We are a Democratic state. One of you will go on to the general election. Should you win, given you are a Republican, how will you work with a largely, like I said, we're a democratic state. How would you work within that system, and how would you build those bridges? Then go ahead.
So as far as me being unelectable, yes, I'm working into that.
Just address the question.
I am a person who can get along. I'm
You have a
addressing
closing
it.
statement.
I'm
Okay.
addressing it.
Thank you.
I'm a person who gets along with many different people. No one who knows me could ever say, I'm not someone who can get along with everybody. I'm a realtor. One of my specialties as a realtor is negotiation. Okay, that's really important. So as far as not being electable, I don't agree with that. But working across the aisle, absolutely. I respect, part of this country is having differences of opinions. I respect everybody's opinion, and I'm a great listener. I like to put the shoe on the other foot. I like to hear what the other side is saying, and I'm great at negotiation and compromise.
Andrew?
I think, having worked in state government, having written an executive order on procurement, having delivered results already only as a candidate, I think it's clear that I am able to cross the aisle and work with people of different beliefs and, a tried and true listener, and I'll be here for the district and whatever is best for our community, regardless of what party the constituent is from.
Thanks. All right. Then now you'll have 2 minutes to provide your closing statement.
I am a political outsider, I agree, that is standing up to the one-party rule in our state. We need someone who has lived life, who has had many life experiences, who's raised a family and knows the struggles of paying bills, having their own mortgage, paying real estate taxes, paying for groceries when times are tough. I'm not running to be a career politician. I'm not running to go along to get along. We have enough of those Republicans in our state, and look at the mess we're in right now. Many of the questions here today, I'm not sure were really relevant for many of you. I know the struggles that many of you are facing right now, and it's because of inflation. With my endorsement from Dean Tran for U.S. Congress, my endorsement from Jeff Deal for governor, and Dennis Galvin, who's our district Republican committee chair, also offered his endorsement for me today. I hope you will also agree I'm the tough candidate. I'll stand up on Beacon Hill. I won't back down, but I will negotiate. I'm the Republican candidate who will best represent the people of our 1st Middlesex district.
I'll be quick. So, I'll
2 minutes.
tell you, as a farmer, as a firefighter, as a business owner, as somebody who has lived experience in all those categories, I am committed to advocating for what we need at the state level. I walk the walk. As a farmer, I have the farmer's work ethic, dusk to dawn. I have the energy to represent our area, to get the resources that we need, and I want to do it. I'm here to earn your vote. I can win as the fiscally conservative candidate, and we need this type of representation that I can bring along with my experience and my ability to work with others. I am proud to ask for your vote on September 6th.
Can I ask one more question?
Well, we were doing them in writing, so I would have to ask the candidates.
Is it your math question, Jim?
It's not a math question.
What I
It's a
do,
short question.
what I do want to be mindful of is there were duplicate questions on vaccination and critical race theory,
No, it's not a
and I didn't
duplicate
ask them
question.
because we're like over the minutes that we had
It's a short
allocated.
question and it's a short response.
If I yield to one, we're gonna have to yield to everybody. So are you okay with asking them in the meet and greet,
And what?
in just the meet and greet discussion after? Because if I let one person do it differently, I have to let everybody do it differently.
Well, you're the boss.
Okay. So this will conclude the time that is being taped and recorded. if the gentleman with the tape recorder up here could come shut that off, that would be much appreciated. We hope that you can spend some time with each of the candidates. There's no longer a bar open here, but there are soft drinks in the back and some snacks, so please take time and talk to the candidates that are here.
Can I ask my question now? Are we in the meet and greet? Are we in the meet and greet?
I'm no longer in charge.
Okay, so this is my question, okay?
Yeah, just 1 second, please. I'm the quartermaster for the Post. Due to our situation with the neighbors, I request that as you leave, do not drive more than 5 miles an hour through here so we can have a good relationship with our neighbors, please. Thank you.
Okay, Andrew, and my question is,
Yeah.
I